Welcome to the Living Out Loud show with Michelle Wadleigh and Ellen Vukas. In each episode, we will explore practical spirituality through inspiring and enlightening conversations. Be a part of our weekly conversation with a rotating cast of speakers, teachers, and authors as we uncover and share spiritual, mental, and emotional tools to help you live your authentic life out loud now. Well, welcome to another episode 18 of the Living Out Loud show. I'm Ellen Vukas.
And I'm Michelle Wadleigh. And I welcome you here today as we return to you on a weekly basis to be in conversation for personally, the truth is for our benefit, but for yours, because we do benefit. These lively conversations cause us to think and rethink and ponder, and we're hoping that does the same for each of our listeners. So I'm glad you're here with us today. Welcome.
Oh, welcome. Yeah, each week we're practical spirituality to support us on living our authentic lives out loud, right? That's what we're all about here.
Yeah.
And Michelle, it's always great for us. I mean, if we don't get to connect anytime during the week, at least there's once a week we're connected. Mm-hmm. We get to have these conversations and fun. And
yes.
So if this is your first time joining us, special welcome to you. And by the way, just make sure to like and subscribe and share, and you know what to do with these types of content and media. But we'd love for you to check us out at our website at livingoutloud.show. And it's there you can subscribe and get our show notes, because anything that we talk about today, we will be sending out as the follow-up with the podcast and all of the links. And if we talk about books, because books do come up, we do reference a few books all the time. And but if you go ahead and just subscribe at our website, you can stay in the know of what's going on at the Living Out Loud show. Look at that, Michelle. I just rhymed. So today we have a special guest joining us today. What's our theme this month, Michelle?
Self-care, our theme, and I'm so grateful for our whole month is all about self-care and different categories within that conversation of self-care. So there's been a lot of great conversations throughout the centers. There's people blogging and making some new decisions. I'm actually seeing people take action on this idea, which is great, because just to talk about it is, doesn't do anything. But if we actually put feet, we put legs under the idea, now we have change and transformation. So I'm thrilled at the amount of people that I hear making different decisions by creating boundaries, or by taking better care of themselves, or by saying no.
Oh,
no when no is right, and then yes when it's necessary. So
that's right. If it's not a yes, it's a no. Remember that we touched on, I think, last week. But
absolutely.
But so with Centers for Spiritual Living, all of ours, not all of them, but many of the centers are following our global themes that you could also find in my magazines upstairs, but in the Science of Mind magazine. Looking for your copy. But in the Science of Mind magazine, each month has a theme, and many of the centers for Centers for Spiritual Living follow that theme. And this month is about embracing self-care. And our guest today is the individual who helped provide a lot of the tools and resources and ideas that are being presented this month. And she does have an article in this month's magazine. And our guest today is Ellen Suazo. And Ellen is in addition to being a licensed spiritual practitioner, she is a transformative figure who helps holistic entrepreneurs unlock their inner power and to create lives that are filled with joy and purpose. She has a background as a community advocate and counselor. And Ellen also brings to us today, and I can't wait to hear from her, with her experience in helping people, guiding them through difficult times. She's the founder of Mind Shifting International where she combines her experience in holistic entrepreneurship, which I really want to hear more about today. She offers coaching and inspirational speaking. And we're honored to have Ellen joining us today as we delve into this topic and what inspired her to share what she shared with in the Science of Mind article and for Centers for Spiritual Living. So, Ellen, welcome to the Living Out Loud show today. We're so pleased to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Such a pleasure.
I'm trying to get the wrong.
Yeah, so yeah, I can do. I'll get it. I'll get it. There we go. There we go.
There we go. Trying to get you featured and a little clunky with the technology.
Yeah, so much for it feels like it's fun and I'm excited about it. It doesn't matter how many times I do this, I always get butterflies all over me. But it's
Of course.
the
And
excitement
tell
having-
everybody where you're coming to us from.
Say that again.
Tell everybody where you are at the moment, because it just makes us international now.
Yes, of course. I actually live now in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I've been here for the last it's going to be 3 years soon. So yeah, it has been an adventure. And the topic that I speak about, which is this month's topic, has served me so much. So that's why I'm really passionate about it. It's beautiful.
Mm. Wow. So we are international now. So welcome. Yeah. Coming from Mexico. Thank you. Welcome. And so, yeah, this topic of self-care is, I know for myself, it has changed my life when it sort of sunk in how important this is. But I guess share with us, I guess, your journey in the self-care. Why is this so important to you? I guess what inspired you to want to bring this forward here to all the communities? And let's hear your story.
Yeah, it started in 2011. My mother was diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's, and it took a whole family. But I decided that I was going to be the main caregiver for her, but I did not know at the time what I was signing myself for.
Mm.
As this was the first experience in our family, I did not know anything about anything about Alzheimer's. It was the first time I heard about it. So it was a shock. But at the same time, in my gut, I knew that this is what I needed to do for my mother, for this being that has been such an awesome person who showed me, not only taught me faith, but showed me by the way she lived faith, real faith. And so I thought that was the least thing that I could do for her. And by going through that process, I took care of my mother for 4 years. And finally, she passed away in 2014, at the end of 2014. But those years, to see her deteriorate little by little, like dying every single day, it's like you see your loved one going through stuff, seeing an amazing, strong, faithful woman, like nothing can touch her, to become the person that she became at the end. It was heart wrenching for me. It was very difficult. And I did not know that I was going through the process. But what I did know is that as I look back, what I know that helped me to go through those years and through those months and through those days and through those hours and minutes of taking care of my mother was the fact that I knew that I needed to take care of myself. And it didn't happen from the beginning. But one day I found myself like, oh my God, what is going on with me? Like, I felt like I was breaking down, because emotionally it's emotional, physical, mental, it's everything at the same time. And especially I decided to go and live with her because we decided to keep her in her home. It was part-time, but like a quarter of the time I was with her, more than part-time. And it was very difficult. Every time I hear someone say that they have a loved one that is going through that, my heart goes to them. My heart goes to them because I know from my own experience, what is it like? And so I remember driving on the Harlem Tunnel, going from her house to my house, because then I used to live in Pennsylvania in the Poconos, and she lived in New York. So I had to do that travel every week, every weekend. And so I remember crying and saying, Father, Mother, God, what is going on? I just don't feel myself anymore. And because I was going towards home, where my home was in the mountains, I had a lake across my house, so it was just peaceful. It was my way of replenishing and rejuvenating and recharging, so I can go back on Monday and take care of her. And at the lake, I remember sitting down and just weeping and just going through it. And I was like, God, please show me the way. Show me the way. I do want to do this. My heart is in it, but it feels like it's very heavy. It feels like I can't do this no more. And this is just the beginning.
Mhm.
So, at that point, I got an influx of like info, like a download, and it was just amazing how that experience happened.
Mm.
And so from there, I realized, it came to me that I needed to continue to do. I have always had my spiritual practice, and that's something that I want to say. I have always, even before Science of Mind, I have always been very prayerful. And but then it says, you know what, you need to take while you there. It guided me what I needed to do while I was in New York with her, when I needed to take breaks, to look at the schedule and kind of really always make sure that I implement self-care throughout the day, not on a daily basis, but throughout the day,
Mm.
because it was so important for my own self-being, for my own self-preservation. Because otherwise, how can you be good for someone that you love so much when you can be good for yourself?
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
Oh, Ellen, I need to jump in because I mean, my parents were gone before my ministry started, and so I haven't had to do both. But I have many colleagues who are currently experiencing the pain and the discomfort of what you're referring to. Some willingly, some got catapulted into that role. So, and my heart breaks for them. I'm never sure what to tell them. So I'm asking you, what advice do you give to, especially if if you're an older person and you're at that point in your life where you want to have your life, but your parent, one or both of your parents are still alive, and they're in this level of need. What would you have them do?
Number one, look at what you have at hand. Number two, look for resources. There are a lot of resources out there. You don't have to do this alone.
Tell
Yes.
tell Give us as an example. I'd love to know.
Yeah, an example is what I learned as going through this is that I decided to put my mom in a daycare. So then, as she was going through the daycare, people that were going through Alzheimer's and dementia, she will go to a daycare from 9 to 3. That time was my time to do whatever I wanted to do with that time. So that included doing whatever work I needed to do, because I have been self-employed for a long time. So I will implement my work in there. I will implement my prayer time, meditation, walking at the park. The water for me is so important. I need to have water
Mm.
around me. And so one of the things that I can say to you, to those of you that are listening, is that you must know who you are. That
Mm.
is so key. That
Mm.
is so key, because knowing who you are, now you can sit down and ask yourself what works for me best. Because I can give you a bunch of spiritual practices, but if you don't know who you are, and if you don't know what works for you, that's going to be the first step, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay.
Beautiful. what I find unfolds from the conversations that I have with these individuals that I'm supporting is often this. It seems like you approach this as a sacred service to
Yes.
your mother,
Yes.
and so you willingly, openly, consciously dove into it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But there are those who get thrown into it, and so sometimes there's resentment,
Mm.
and that's that it. And I know they don't want to feel resentful, but they do, because often, not always with Alzheimer's, um, people can be happy in that way, or they can get mean and ornery,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it can go in either direction, and probably a mix in between. So my heart especially breaks for those who don't necessarily relate to it as a sacred service, but as a chore. It just makes it so hard, so hard.
I am grateful that you brought that up, Michelle. That's beautiful what you said. Sacred service. I definitely never thought of it like that, but thank you.
Feels that way to me. It feels like it's like when you raised your children. I know we don't think of it in that category, but when you raise your children, you do it with so much love. It's a sacred practice.
Yes.
And now when we on the other side of our lives, sometimes we return that to our parents.
Yes, 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 yes. Like when that happened for all of us, it was a surprise. It must have been happening a long time, but we did not notice because we didn't live with her. She lived by herself, and then one day she got lost within a week 3 times. So
Mm.
that sent a big red flag for all of us. And the last time that she got lost, the doctor said you cannot leave her alone anymore.
Mm, mm,
So
mm, mm.
it was at that time we all had to make a decision, and all my, most of my siblings were thinking, I guess we're gonna have to put her someplace because each person has their own stuff going on, right?
That's the challenge.
I have my stuff, but you know what? To me, I owed everything to this woman. And I couldn't find it in my heart to send her someplace.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I couldn't do it. I would not be who I am today if I had done that.
Right, right, right.
So at that point, it was a selfish decision, I guess,
Mm-hmm,
because
mm-hmm.
I did it more for myself than for her. Like you were saying at the beginning, we're doing this more for ourselves than for you.
Right, right. And the other piece I want to bring this piece in too. I know this isn't quite what we were talking about today, but I think that a lot of people can be served because millions of people are in this position right now, millions of people. And the other thing you tiptoed around, you didn't say yet, but what I also see is the bounty of resentment. When I remember when my mother was dying, I was raising 3 young children. I lived an hour away. I couldn't be there as much as she needed me to be. And initially she was pissed at me. So there's a resentment that goes on between often between the siblings when the responsibility does not fall equally. And then that just complicates it that much more.
Wow.
Yeah, I can actually, even though that I didn't go through that at the beginning when I had to make that choice. At the end, it happened because I was burned out.
Mm.
And I felt that my siblings were not taking their part as they needed it. So it's so much that I believe that plays so much into our family circle where before, and I'm going to say for myself, I cannot speak for them. I can speak for myself. I feel that broke our family circle. I don't feel as tight with my family. I feel that I am outcast.
Mm.
I feel, and that's because I spoke, because I said, I need help. I can't do this no more.
Mhm.
Right, right.
I am needing help. And having that courage to tell your siblings and your family that you need help, that is part of self-care.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because if I didn't realize that if I'm not going to break down and I cannot continue to do this work and I need more help than what I'm being getting, And instead of getting help, I'm getting betrayed. That's my experience. So I know it breaks family down. It breaks family down, and especially when the main caregiver speaks up and knows what he needs. But you have to, I in self-care, what I know is that we have to learn how to be selfish. And that's something that our culture, whether it's Latino or American or whatever culture it is, what I learned is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I learned is that most of us are being taught that being selfish is not good. That we have to do for others and give and give and give and give and let everybody run all over you, and you just stay still. No, I'm sorry, but I learned that I need to be selfish. And yesterday I was speaking to my son, and he said, "Oh, that sounds mean." I said to him, "Yeah, it sounds mean, but that means that I'm taking care of myself." And sometimes I am going to sound mean to whoever, but I'm just speaking for myself. It has nothing to do with you.
Right.
Yeah, that's, listening to you, Ellen, that is reminded of a quote that we had shared last week, and what you were just saying here. I'm going to share the quote, but self-care is not self-indulgence; it is self-preservation.
Yes.
So that's what I'm hearing, is that it. Yeah, I mean, how can you care for others if you're overgiving and overgiving and overgiving, and then you have nothing left to give?
It's like saying, that we give from that overflowing, from the cup overflowing. And that is not just, a lot of people might think it's financially, but it's in every area of our life. How can we give of anything if we don't have an overflow of it?
Right.
It's kind of impossible. And I think that when that happens, that's where resentment comes in. That's when anger comes in. That's when regrets comes in, because we're not taking care of the main person.
Right.
Which is ourselves. which is ourselves. So I heard you say that. So we need to start with an understanding of who we are and what we need. So it starts there. And then you said that look at what you do have. That was something else. Look at what you have. And then you also said, well, then look at what are other resources. So looking at what you have, could you speak a little more to that, as far as, so then what would someone, now in this situation that you raised was around being a caregiver for your mother, which I can relate to. I had to do the same thing for my mother. I was 19 years old, and I moved back home to become her primary caregiver. And I hear you. Tina Turner became one of my self-care, who just passed away recently, but she became her music became an instrument of self-care for me. I used to, when I could get a break, while you sent your mother to, she was at daycare, at adult daycare. If there was someone else that would watch my mother, I would just go for a drive. And I remember just driving down the road, listening to Tina Turner, on the speakers of my car. I'm just a teenager, but just to get my head clear and let Tina, sing soothe my soul, right? Soothe my soul. But so what are some other things, as far as looking at what you have, then what else, I guess, what are some things, practical ways that people what should they be examining or looking for?
Right. The first question is, I think that when we ask ourselves questions, we're more likely then to get answers. And be still. First of all, we have to be in a place where we can be still and be willing to listen. And one of the things that I realized as I was going through that ordeal is that what helped me through going through all that stuff was that I had a practice before that came to me. And having a practice. So what I can say to those of you that are listening, don't wait to have something happen. have a practice now. Start a practice now. Because
Mhm.
if you have a practice now, then when whatever happens, you just have to incorporate or continue to do your practice, enhance your practice, or maybe do a little bit more. Because I used to have a daily practice. Then I realized I needed to do practice throughout the day, maybe every hour, even if it's just to sit still and breathe.
Mm,
Maybe within every hour, I'm going to have my cup of coffee and, or juice, whatever I like, indulge myself in what I like. I would say, and every day is different. You just go and move with what your heart desires to do. Allow yourself to feel, allow yourself to be. And as you allow yourself to be and feel, now I really believe that God always gives us the answers.
mm,
I can only speak for myself again, but um, I have been gifted that I can hear the voice of God and is guiding me. I remember being 6 years old, the first time I heard the voice in my head guiding me,
mm,
and it has never stopped since then. And that is what it has guided me through life. And it continues to guide me through life.
mm,
And so I cannot express how important that relationship with God is. And what I know is that the relationship is personal. My relationship is not the same as yours, but you must just, I love to say, just like any other relationship, right? We have to give it time. If we don't give it time, how can we nourish it? How can we build the relationship?
mm,
It's kind of hard to build a relationship without putting time, effort, energy into it. So, what makes us think that the relationship with our creator is going to be any different?
Yeah, and I want to jump in here for a reason, and because I always feel like I want to speak the voice for the humanist in the room or the atheist, because that relationship that Ellen is speaking of, um, it doesn't have to come in the form of God.
Yes.
It can come in the form of just a profound peace that you feel by being sitting at a river, sitting by a body of water, which science has proven has great effect on us. Whether you're a hiker, I know my middle son, his spirituality takes form when he goes for overnight hikes by himself, alone, for 1 or 2 days in the woods, just alone. And for him, that serves that. So if you're listening and you're not God oriented, that doesn't mean that what we're saying doesn't have value, and it doesn't mean you're limited. What it means is that you just have a different way of finding your grounding.
mm,
So I just want to speak that into the room, because I wouldn't want anyone to feel like left out from this conversation, because this conversation is universal.
right.
Parents, taking care of parents, the stress of it, raising children, all these conversations we're having, these are universal things that we have to face. And but so wherever we come from, we just need to find that grounding, as Ellen is pointing out to us. And I so agree with you.
Mhm.
And Michelle, and just what you were saying too, it's not only this isn't only when if we're caring for our parents,
Yeah.
right? It's about caring for ourselves, because we have there. I mean, there are many places in our life where we have to give. Wherever we're showing up, we're giving of ourselves in some way. And so let's be mindful. And as I'm hearing you say, Ellen, is that don't
Yes.
wait until you're all used up. You don't have to wait till then before you start taking care of yourself.
Mhm.
And so starting where you're at today, what do I need? What do I want? What am I feeling?
Yes.
And what are some of the elements? So you said you had a practice before. Would you mind sharing what that looked like? So if someone who may not have a self-care practice or even a spiritual practice of connecting, what would be some general things from your experience?
I love what Michelle said, because I used to, as a little girl, I used to live a block away from the beach, and the beach was my sanctuary. I didn't know that. I can look back today and I can see that. And so I think that a lot of times we already inherently in our gut, in our own being, we already know, he knows what serves us, but we have not paid attention to what that is. And so I love the fact that Reverend Michelle said, maybe it's a hike at the water, by the park, maybe just sitting by having a nice cup of coffee or tea, whatever it is that you like, but you're by yourself and you're just kind of enjoying the moment, being present. I think that that's something that is so key. And that goes with what I started with. You need to know who you are. That's
Yeah.
why I say you need to know who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. So, Alan, I want to bring into it this week's focus that for this week of the theme, and I'd like to have your perspective on this, Alan, since you wrote it. You talked about the understanding grief and joy as it relates to self-care. So I'd love for you to give some language to that, if you're willing.
Sure, sure, sure. I truly believe that joy and we're grieving is something that is unavoidable in our lives. And what I want those that are listening to know is that grieving is not just something that happens when someone passed away. It's one of them, but it's not the only one. I think that every single day, as we get deep into our teachings and into our philosophy and in our spiritual practice, we understand that every day we could be grieving because we left the day and we didn't finish what we had in mind to do. It's as small as that. But we grieve when we finish relationships for whatever reason, jobs, contracts, projects. And it takes so many forms. When you become an empty nester, when your children leave, believe it or not, life is a grieving. It's a mix of grief and joy. We just do not recognize it as it because we have been trained into that it only happens when someone dies.
I have to say to you, you're right, because the conversation around grief has been more and more in this spiritual community, in what we have going on with Centers for Spiritual Living, and I true confessions. I'll always say true confessions when I'm about to expose my ignorance. I didn't get it. I really didn't get it. I mean, I get it now, but I had to grow into getting it. I wasn't in touch with grief, because I heard so many people say, oh, they're grieving. I'm like, they're grieving. What the hell are they grieving over? But now I get it. And it's the buildup of the little losses, and I think, depending upon what that looks like, there are easier ways than navigating that, but denial of it is not one of them. That is not one of them. Denial will never deliver you to the holy land of peace and joy. It will not.
That's right. There's something even called ambiguous grief. Ambiguous grief is grief that is, look how our society has changed over the past couple of years. We have had with the pandemic, the lockdown, life doesn't look the same way that it did before. And whenever we are experiencing a loss of some sort, there is the opportunity for grief to be experienced. And so even if it's the change in an identity, I used to do this, but I no longer do that. Missed opportunities. I woulda, coulda, shoulda.
And I want to say here too, I've heard a lot of people, a lot of mothers and fathers, mostly mothers over the years, they go, oh, I miss my children being babies. I want them to be babies, which is kind of ridiculous because they're never going to just be babies, not permanently. And we set ourselves up for loss. For me, I loved when they matured and have conversations and played games and had opinions. And so I didn't necessarily have to experience that loss, but sometimes we project ourselves into it by holding on to what was. And there you go. That's not a great way of self-care, because it's just, we're setting ourselves up to be, victim to a natural life incident that is unavoidable.
So Ellen, so with your ideas around grief, I guess even with taking care of your mother, there was even the prospect of, but even the changes or losses in life, your normal life, while caring for her, was bringing up grief as well, I would imagine.
Every single day. And just like Michelle said, I wasn't even aware that that was happening. So yes. And I love what Michelle said too, that the beauty, the gift, I call it the gift, is in not denying it and not doing spiritual bypass, but really facing and acknowledging it, because it just it's an emotion that is asking for attention. And when we give it attention, we dissipate its energy, its strength, because we're giving it attention. And whatever way that attention comes in, what matters is that we take the time to acknowledge, this is what I'm feeling. And it's okay to be okay with it. We don't have to change it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yes. So what I'd like you to speak to too, regarding self-care and grief, is that often people think of it as having a time limit. And as a minister, I engage many people who have just experienced loss or who are about to experience, they know it's coming. And the only thing, because I never tell anybody how to feel, but the thing I say to every single person that has ever just lost someone, no one gets to tell you how long. No one gets to tell you how long or what your grief should look like. Because I think that we've put a certain timeline on it, even if it's because of Kubler-Ross's stages of loss and grief. And we think, oh, let's move along. Oh, when are we at the next stage, right? And it doesn't work that way. And it's fluid, right? So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, sure. That's great what you brought up, Reverend Michelle. I think that that's why I say allowing ourselves to be with it is so important. At least I can speak for myself, my experiences, and not just like going through my mother's situation, but going through raising my children as a single mother, being an entrepreneur, leaving jobs, leaving relationships, so many things, right? I think the most important thing, what I've learned, is that it's about being with it. It's the most important with it, and acknowledging it, acknowledging that this is how I'm feeling, and that it's okay to feel the way I feel, and how long. I don't put time into it, because I think putting time into it is the biggest mistake.
Yeah,
because it's like you setting a goal.
right. And that's why I brought it up. Like, yeah, we tend to be, those of us in this movement tend to be on the same page, but I want to bring out some of these little details, these nuances that someone else might not, be working with in their mind, because those are really important nuances. It really does make a difference. Mm-hmm. I know when my eldest sister died a number of years ago now, that she when she died, she was the sister who gave me permission for me to be me more than anyone else. And so when she died, I just allowed myself, like I turned inward and allowed myself to like really feel the loss and all the stuff that came with it. But some of my family members didn't necessarily do that. And I watched and I almost thought I missed it because there's a very precious time during loss that you can never replicate. You can't replicate there's this open window. It's like the veil has been lifted. And if you go through loss in a mindful way during that time, which is only at that time, you get to touch some sacred, precious parts of yourself that don't come otherwise. And so I was having this like incredible, sad, grieving experience, but it was also beautiful. And I watched my family members that were kind of avoiding it or having a drink or not wanting to touch it or not wanting to talk about it. And I saw how it pained them. And so I'm grateful for this teaching because this is the teaching that taught me to not be afraid and to dive in, full force into the middle of the feeling.
Mm-hmm. What? Go ahead. No.
Go ahead.
I would say I'll turn it over to our guest, but I was just what I heard, and is that is part of self-care is feeling the feelings, feeling what you feel, because it's only as you're navigating those times, while specifically, in the context of grief or loss, it's only in the present that we get to receive the presence. Right? It's in that moment and in that experience and letting yourself feel. And I think that's where it's really important to have tools or practices beforehand, that when we do encounter those moments of loss, that we have something to rely on to support us. Because some losses can feel, of course, larger than others. Some of them are big.
And Ellen, I know you're a mother and a grandmother. And so the other thing I'd like to, I don't know if you have an opinion about this. I assume you might because of what you do. But sometimes parents want to protect. I'm going to use the word protect because that's what they think they're doing. They want to protect their children from having the experience of loss. They don't necessarily expose them to a funeral, a memorial, all those things. I think that's a huge mistake. I think we have to learn that while surrounded by loving family. How do we grieve? But I see people think that it's not the thing to do. Can you speak to that?
What I have practiced with my inner circle, and I call it inner circle, my children and my grandchildren, is I speak about loss all the time to them, and I make sure that if we lose somebody. I remember Harmony, my granddaughter, my oldest one. She was the only one, the little one. She was only 6 or 7 when my mom passed away. And before that came, I used to speak to her about that we were just releasing the body. And we never die. And it's just the body goes away, but her spirit is always going to be around us. Her energy is always be around us to keep her in our heart. And for some reason, Harmony, when my mom passed away, she actually stood up and spoke at the funeral event. And she said, I'm so grateful that I was able to meet and be with my great grandmother. And that could have only happened because, like you said, we have those conversations. And so having those conversations are very important. Yes. It prepare our children and our grandchildren, and also it prepare us.
Yeah, and don't you, I think with what you're saying that could eventually translate into learning how to practice self-care. If we as adults are modeling that to our children and grandchildren, and I've had similar conversations, when my children, if it's we've had to put dogs down within our family, and I'll just, I normalize it as much as possible. We all go. Sometimes we go, and it's okay.
Yeah,
We don't
and,
have, we don't have to be afraid.
yeah, and like you were saying also, recognizing that yes, we're gonna feel sad. But what I learned is that being in a gratitude, having like Alan was speaking about, some tools that we can use. And what I always do is, no matter what's going on in my life, I do my very best to be grateful for what is, what has been, and the gift, whether I see it at the moment or not. Because a lot of times when we're going through grief or pain, it's challenging to see the good in it, depending on what that is, right? So I think to be able to remember to be grateful, whether you know what you're grateful for or not.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's not an easy practice, but I believe that when we begin to put our hearts and our souls into a practice, God finds a way to make us understand what we don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
It's beyond understanding.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
powerful. It was just, as I'm sitting here listening to this, I'm just thinking of there's a story about the short of it, the gist of it was, there's this little boy helped a butterfly out of its cocoon. He saw it struggling, and he wanted to help it, to relieve it of the struggle. And by him trying to help alleviate the struggle, it ended up actually harming the butterfly, because that struggle was necessary for it to step into its fullness. And in our human experience, loss is part of our human experience. And if we shield or try to keep people from experiencing those moments of what can feel like brokenness, then we are inadvertently keeping them from stepping into the fullness of who they are, and discovering those parts that are within them that only come out in those times of
Yep.
pain. And so, I don't know. I mean, self-soothing, self-care, this self-work, trying to do it for others robs them and cheats them
Yeah.
of developing those skills themselves.
I'm partially Irish, and the other day, my granddaughter, who looks totally Cuban, because her mother is a beautiful Cuban woman and she's a beautiful Cuban young lady, but she does Irish step dancing. Go figure. But they had a little recital. It was really for the children and the parents. There wasn't a big to do, but it was very precious. And what I loved, and the thing that's in the world of the Irish culture, is very children oriented. So the children were there, and during one of the performances, there was this one little boy running around, this little toddler, but no one was frazzled. Eventually, the mother came and got him, but no one was frazzled. There was an acceptance of the presence of the child and children in what was going on. And I think that, like in Ireland, when they don't have bars, they have pubs. So families go to be there. So, but what I'm trying to bring out is that while we're practicing self-care and we're talking about it as far as grief and loss and how to navigate it, for every parent listening or grandparent, do your children and grandchildren a real justice by inviting the conversation. Don't make it taboo. Like, don't be bold in the conversation. I'm sure there's books out there, although I don't know one of them, but I guarantee you there's hundreds of books to how to talk to your children about this stuff. But mainly, don't you like what you said, Alan, don't cheat them. Don't cheat them. by protecting them. Protecting them sometimes is cheating them of the experience that they need to grow on.
They're going to have to at some point in time.
Yeah.
Or I mean, they will either develop the skills or they won't, now or later. and so it is really a disservice to try to keep people from experiencing, being present to what's going on in that moment. I think, in the Jewish tradition, when someone passes, there is, the covering of the mirrors, and sorry about that. The cover, they cover the mirrors, and they sit around and pull out the pictures and tell the stories for an entire week, like they do a deep dive
Shiva.
into that. And in order to feel it and feel it deeply, to feel it and feel it deeply. And so, maybe some of us could learn from that, especially in parts of our society where this loss and grief is sanitized or sterilized, or it's not proper or appropriate to feel too deeply, right? So Ellen, I just want to ask you, as we're, I'm just looking at the time. The time has just been going. But I'd like to hear more. So what is it? What else do you do? What do you do? And I'd love to, because we're going to share at the end as far as how people can get in touch with you if they want to work with you. But what other work do you do in the world? How are you supporting individuals and living their life out loud?
So as an entrepreneur, I combine traditional entrepreneurship with holistic entrepreneurship using universal tools that definitely can help you make that process easy because it can be challenging. But having someone that has that can hold you by the hand and teach you. And I also have a course, an e-course that you can have, and a free ebook that can take you through some steps for you to avoid some of the mistakes that as an entrepreneurs we make. And so those are some of the things that I do as a practitioner. I'm always available to support you in any way possible. I love supporting people. That's just, I love teaching classes. I don't know, but that's just who I am, a teacher. When I was a little girl, they used to ask me, what you gonna be when you grow up? And I say a teacher. But then when I came to the United States, because just so you know, I'm originally from Honduras, Central America, and I came to the States when I was 15. And so when I went to the school system in the States, I was just like, no way, I'm not gonna be a teacher. But then as I grew older and found these teachings, I realized, oh yes, this is what I'm here to do, teach. I'm here to teach. So empowering people to be the best person, the best version of themselves. So yeah.
I have a question. Nothing to do with self-care. I want to know what brought you, what moved you to move to Mexico?
Self-care.
Oh, it was okay. All right.
I live 5 minutes away from the beach. As I say, I realize water is something that I have to have, and so that is part of my self-care, and being allowing yourself to know yourself. Even though that I'm here just by myself, everybody, my families, and in the States, I'm just here by myself. I actually have my grandbabies with me for a whole year. They're leaving soon. And so I was a Miami for a whole year, and it has been an experience that I will never ever forget. And also, again, self-care.
Beautiful.
I'm not speaking something from reading books. I'm speaking from experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's beautiful. I'm gonna put it up on the screen for those. Here's some URLs or websites that you can go to connect with Ellen and find out more about what she does. And if you want to reach out to her, ellensuazo.com or at holisticentrepreneuronline.com, where you can also check out Live Your Desired Life Now That sounds very intriguing, Ellen.
Juicy.
Yeah, it sounds.
What I also want to say is that you can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, as an entrepreneurs, holistic entrepreneurs, and conscious living. For
That's
conscious living.
conscious. That's great.
For conscious living.
Beautiful.
So where from in Honduras? Because I've been to Honduras a few times. I went down there as a youth missionary. I was down in the islands, down in Utila and Roatan. I've been to La Ceiba, San Pedro Sula, Tegucigalpa, Copan de Ruinas.
So you've been in my town. I lived the last 8 years of my life. I lived in La Ceiba.
Oh yes, I've been to La Ceiba a few. Well, we would come in and then fly and leave there from La Ceiba to go to Utila, and I have some wonderful memories in Honduras, and yes,
Yeah, my grandmother used to live a block away from the beach, and I used to think I was a mermaid turning to a human.
how wonderful! So yeah, you're spending time now even near the water, being by the water, that mermaid self. So Michelle, as we're getting close to our time here, so where should people go to find you? I'm looking up here. Where should they find you?
I'm on Facebook. I'm Rev Jersey Girl. Practically everywhere, I'm Rev Jersey Girl. And PlannedHappinessInstitute.com is my education nonprofit. And I don't have the other one here. I'm sorry. CSL North Jersey is my spiritual community in back in Montclair, New Jersey. I'm happy to say we've returned to the wonderful town of Montclair, and that's where I am. What about you, Alan?
Yeah, so if you want to find me on Facebook, I'm Rev Ellen Vukas, or you can. I'm also at Concordia CSL. Concordia CSL anything. That's where I serve as the senior minister here in Rhode Island. Concordia Center for Spiritual Living. We stream our services online, and we're talking about these topics. And so, if you'd like to join us on a Sunday, feel free. Or at CSL North Jersey, cslnj.org. Or I do some writing at newthoughtnewlife.com. And I'd love to. You could subscribe there and see what sort of things I'm going on about. You know, I have a few thoughts.
Yeah, I also just stepping on you. I also want to say that I do serve at the One Love Center CSL as well. So you can also find me on One Love Center CSL. On Sunday we have services too, and we speak about the topics of the month.
One Love. Yeah, I'd love that. One Love. That's
beautiful.
Great.
All right.
Oh, well, this has been a wonderful. Thank you so much, Ellen, for joining us today.
It's been fun.
And I think the subject, even it went deeper into the conversation around grief with self-care, but I think it's a really important subject, and I'm really grateful that you brought it out, because there are people, and I'd love to say this with all my heart, there are people who are silently suffering, and I'd so love them not to. I would so love it. Ellen, you said it from the beginning. There are resources. There are resources. Do some search. I don't know exactly what you would search for, but I do know there are resources out there to get help, so you don't have to feel alone in the struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that if you're going through Alzheimer's or dementia, they have alzheimers.com. Many organizations around the nation that supports. It's amazing what they have there, the education. That helped me a lot. So that goes with that. But also know that with us as the Centers for Spiritual Living, we have an amazing team of practitioners who can support you through whatever process you're going through. We have been professionally trained to support you. And let's say that I cannot help you, we have so many others that can help you. So don't do life alone. Please don't. Find somebody, reach out for somebody. And if you don't know and you reach out to me, I promise you, I will do everything to help you to find a resource. and to help you. And I know that Michelle and Alan will do the same. Each one of us, that's what we're here for. We're here to show you and let you know that you're not alone, no matter what's going on in your life.
Beautiful.
I love that, Ellen. Thank you. And that is so get help. Don't do life is no person is an island. We're not here or meant to be alone. And so reach out, get help, support. That's a way of taking care of yourself.
Yeah, and being, some people say, well, I'm alone or I like to be alone. Well, that's different than not asking for help. You can still have both. You can still get help to manage these things and still have your alone time, because I'm an introvert myself and I love my quiet time. Yeah. Many of us that are in this teaching, many of us are introverts. And I know that my greatest inspiration, and you mentioned this a couple times today, comes from silence. And so you get to have both, though, because when I do need help, I call Alan, actually. But Alan's he's one of my team. Like we should each have a posse.
That's
people
right.
that you feel safe with, people you can cry around, people that you can break down with and not care that you have snot running down your face. You need a posse of people like that, each one of us. But you have to create it. You do have to create it,
That's right. Well, Michelle, let's just go ahead and pray out. We have reached the top of the hour.
Okay.
And so we would thank everyone for joining us today. Ellen, again, thank you so much for you joining us today. And Michelle, as always, love it. But let's just go ahead and just close with a brief word of prayer here, just to anchor this. And if you're joining us for the first time or whenever, make sure to subscribe. Check us out at livingoutloud.show. And we'll send you the resources and the links where you can find Ellen and Michelle and myself as well, and what we talked about today. So let's just move within for just a moment here. And it's from this place of gratitude that I recognize and know that there is this one thing called life, spirit, source, divine love that has shown up here today in and through all of the words that have been spoken, through our special guest here today, Ellen, Michelle, and myself, and each listener here who has come to this show to listen and to hear and to receive the gifts. I know that it is spirit that has harmonized this gathering. Now, and for each one who will listen to this recording even in the future at their time. And I just accept and know right now that divine love within each one is guiding and directing them into greater self-care, into a greater awareness of who they are, in order not to be selfish in a way to take away from anyone else. But I am claiming and knowing that love within each one is moving them into caring for themselves so that they can even be of greater service, to be a greater gift to those in their lives. So by caring for ourselves, we can actually be of greater service and live our lives out loud. So until we come together again at our next episode, next Wednesday at noon Eastern, I just know that this divine love guides and directs and protects each one, and I allow it to be by saying, and so it is. Thank you. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you so much for being here. It was so lovely to see you again. Boy, and I'm gonna see what I could do about seeing you in your part of the world. I love Puerto Vallarta.
You're welcome to come.
Lovely.
And thank you for each of you for joining us today. We'll see you here next week. Have a wonderful week.
Love you all. Bye.
Blessings. Bye-bye.